slapped me at her wedding. So I had SWAT raid her luxury dinner concrete. Steel, mortar, blood. These elements built Boston and they built me. I am Harry Caldwell, 70 years old. My hands look dragged across a jagged reef thick, calloused, permanently stained with the ghosts of 50 years of labor. Looking at the Boston skyline tonight, wind howling off the harbor, I see my life's work. I poured the foundations of those towers. I built an empire with bare hands, amassing $18 million. But I never wore a suit. I drive a rusted Ford F-150 and drink black coffee from a thermos. I wanted my son, Brandon, to understand the value of a dollar earned through sweat, not inheritance. Instead, I raised a weak, entitled shadow who values wealth's veneer over structural character. The Liberty Hotel, a former prison transformed into excess, is the site of Brandon's wedding reception. The grand rotunda is thick with imported lilies and perfume. Low lighting casts golden hues over guests looking mass-produced. I stand in the corner, a weathered gargoyle amidst preening peacocks, wearing a simple dark suit tailored a decade ago for Martha's funeral. Martha, my beautiful wife, the foundation of my soul. Without her, this family crumbled. I watch Brandon across the room in a tuxedo costing more than my first truck. He holds a champagne flute delicately, laughing at jokes he'll forget. Beside him is Courtney, his new wife, Courtney. The name tastes like bile. She is a creature of greed wrapped in designer silk and desperate ambition. Her smile is a weapon deployed only for transactions. Her eyes calculate net worth in seconds. She views me with veiled disgust, an eccentric relic refusing to act his net worth. I've negotiated with ruthless union bosses, but Courtney is a different predator, believing the world owes her a crown. Tonight she is a parasitic queen holding court. A string quartet plays unnoticed. The glasses clink, laughter rings hollow. I feel a structural warning sign in my chest, a microfracture in a load-bearing column. The reception hits its peak, prime rib served, speeches delivered. I nurse club soda when the crowd parts. Courtney marches toward me, heels clicking with military precision. Brandon trails behind, hunched, and eyes fixed on the floor, looking like a hostage. Conversations die, eyes turn, the string quartet plays on. Courtney stops 2 feet away, radiating toxic energy. Her expression is raw, predatory. She extends an open palm. "The keys, Harry," she says loudly, cutting the ambient noise like a circular saw. It is time. I look at her palm, then her eyes. "Keys to what, Courtney?" "The Beacon Hill penthouse. Our wedding gift." She speaks as if reading a divine decree. "Brandon told me you were holding them until the reception." "We are married. Give me the keys." I look at Brandon. He shrinks, refusing eye contact, adjusting his bow tie, avoiding the man who raised him. "There is no wedding gift," I say, steady and grounded. "I told Brandon months ago, I am not giving you the penthouse. It is my home. It was Martha's home." Courtney's eyes widen. Pure rage cracks her facade. "Excuse me?" She snaps. Guests step back, forming a circle of voyeuristic silence. "You live in a filthy truck. You dress like a vagrant. That penthouse belongs to us now." "It is our time. Nothing belongs to you," I reply levelly. "You earn what you keep in this world. You have earned nothing." The rotunda's silence is absolute. The quartet stops. 200 eyes watch. Courtney's face morphs into vicious hatred. She winds up and strikes. The slap echoes like a gunshot against stone walls. The physical impact stings my left cheek, snapping my head. I taste copper where my teeth clipped my lip, but physical pain is nothing compared to the shockwave. I turn back to face her. I do not raise a hand or flinch. I stand like a poured concrete pillar. "Look at him," Courtney screams, voice cracking with manufactured hysteria. She addresses the horrified crowd, flailing in theatrical distress. "He doesn't even know where he is." A murmur ripples. Confusion, discomfort. "He is sick." Courtney continues with artificial tears, pointing at my chest. "He has dementia. We tried to hide it, but his mind is gone. He signed the papers last week, agreed to move to an assisted living facility. He promised us the penthouse, and now his diseased brain forgot." A masterclass in manipulation. A brutal character assassination. She rewrites reality, weaponizing my age, painting me as a confused elder ruining her perfect day. It is a strategic demolition. I look at Brandon, my flesh and blood, the boy I taught to ride a bicycle, who I worked double shifts for. He watches his wife destroy his father. "Brandon," I say quietly, but carrying, "tell them the truth. Brandon swallows hard, face pale with nervous sweat. He looks at Courtney's terrifying intensity, then the judgmental crowd, then me. "Dad, please," Brandon whispers, trembling, pathetic. "Give her the keys, please, don't make a scene. Go to the facility, please." He chooses the lie, the comfort of her approval over truth. He sacrifices his father for his weakness. The betrayal hits harder than the slap, a structural failure of the heart. The boy is hollow, the foundation turned to dust. I look at Courtney, then Brandon, a glacial coldness settles in my chest. The anger is frozen, absolute, diamond hard. "You have made your choice," I say heavily. I turn my back, the crowd parts. I walk toward the heavy oak doors, boots striking marble with rhythmic thuds. I leave the lies, stepping into the biting Boston night. The cold air shocks my system, clearing the toxic fog. The valet brings my 1998 Ford F-150, battered, rusted, scarred from job sites. The kid looks with pity and confusion. I hand him $20, climb in, and slam the door. The engine turns over. The heater blasts dry air. My hands shake from adrenaline. The betrayal is a shadow passenger. My son corroborated her lie. I pull onto Storrow Drive. The Charles River is black glass. I drive toward Beacon Hill, my sanctuary, the brownstone I bought for Martha. Beacon Hill's cobblestone streets are narrow, lined with flickering gas lamps. I park illegally and step out. The wind cuts through my jacket. I walk up the steps of number 42, a brick monolith. I own the building, living in the penthouse. Lower floors are vacant. My fortress. I reach the mahogany door, pulling my heavy brass key. I slide it into the deadbolt. It doesn't turn. I try again. The cylinder was changed. A brand new high-security lock, not my work. I look at the electronic keypad. I punch in 1978. The year Martha and I married. A harsh tone beeps. A red light flashes. Assess dented. I punch again. Slower. A dent in my heart beats slowly. A cold realization washes over. The slap. The gaslighting. The keys demand. It was a distraction. The intercom crackles. "You are not getting in." Harry, her tinny voice. "Courtney," using the smart home app Brandon installed. "Courtney, open this door." Her metallic laughter filters through. Locks were changed this afternoon. Brandon signed the work order. We are legal occupants now. The deed transfer is processing. Try to break in. I'll call the cops and say a confused old man with dementia is trying to enter our home. Go to a shelter. This is our property. The speaker clicks off. Dead silence. I stand locked out. Exiled by my flesh and blood, the localized fire of rage becomes a total systemic meltdown. Contained by iron will, I walk down the steps to the narrow alleyway. The darkness smells of damp brick. I see heavy, black plastic garbage bags piled near dumpsters. Dozens. I slice one open with my pocket knife. Books spill onto wet cobblestones, engineering volumes. History, a framed photograph of me on a steel beam, glass shattered over my younger face. I slice another bag, clothes, work boots, jackets, shirts, tossed like infectious waste. My chest tightens. I barely feel the seeping cold. I cut the plastic from a large flat rectangle. An oil painting, Martha's portrait for our 20th anniversary. She wore a green dress, eyes bright. It hung above the fireplace. Drawn directly onto the canvas, across her beautiful face, is a thick black marker mustache. Beneath it, scrawled across her throat, "Evicted." I drop to my knees. The ink soaks into delicate brushstrokes. A petty, malicious act of cruelty, spiritual vandalism. My hands hover. To touch it makes it real. Martha, my anchor. They dragged her memory into the gutter. A low primal sound escapes my throat. The sound of a foundation cracking under unimaginable stress. The sound of a good man dying, something else taking his place. I kneel for a long time. The cold freezes moisture on my cheeks. When I stand, grief is gone. What remains is a calculating clarity, a vacuum devoid of mercy. I leave the bags and return to my truck. I sit in the dark cab, smelling stale coffee and diesel. I look up at the penthouse, dark windows. They think they won. They made a catastrophic miscalculation. They misunderstood my architecture. They think I'm a senile contractor. They don't realize I'm the man who built the systems they rely on. I reach behind the seat, finding the heavy metal Pelican case. I pull out a Panasonic Toughbook, a ruggedized laptop built for war. I boot it up. A blinking cursor waits against a stark terminal screen. When I renovated, I installed a commercial-grade building management system. Climate control, lighting, security, electronic locks, all integrated. I went further. I wired the structure, microscopic cameras behind vents, sensitive microphones inside crown molding, to monitor integrity and ensure my sanctuary was never breached. Brandon knew nothing. My thick fingers fly across the rugged keyboard. I type the IP of the hidden server. I type the 72-character master key. Access granted, welcome. Architect. I bypass Courtney's app. I dive into the root directory. I have unmitigated control, but right now, I need intelligence. I execute a script activating surveillance. A grid of 16 camera feeds appears in infrared. The penthouse springs to life. Empty rooms in night vision. Luxury furniture sitting silently. I activate audio recording. A hiss of static, then the refrigerator hum. It's 11:45 p.m. The reception will end soon. They will come to celebrate their theft. I pour lukewarm black coffee from my thermos. The caffeine mixes with adrenaline. My mind is a furnace burning with precise intensity. I am the architect. I calculate load-bearing capacities, plan for catastrophic failure. They are a stress test on my legacy. I will evaluate their structural integrity at 12:15 a.m. The front deadbolt turns, the door swings open, foyer lights blaze, washing out infrared, cameras switch to color. Courtney walks in, carrying heels, exhausted but illuminated by a triumphant grin. She spins, claiming territory. Brandon follows, dragging a suitcase, nervous eyes, a trespasser. "We did it," Courtney says, picked up by the microphone. "It's ours." She collapses onto the leather sofa Martha and I picked in Italy. Brandon hovers near the kitchen. "Are you sure this is okay?" "What if he calls the cops?" Courtney scoffs. "Let him. What will he say? That his son won't let him in?" "They'll drop him at a psych ward." I planted the dementia seed. The narrative is set. She engineered the confrontation for a legal defense. A preemptive strike. "I didn't think you'd hit him, that was extreme." Brandon says. Courtney sits up. "Extreme? Sit down, we need to talk about reality." Brandon sits. "You think I wanted this place for the view?" She asks. "I owe money, a lot of money, 500,000, to a man named Vinny. He breaks legs. The debt was due last week." Brandon turns ash. $500,000? Gambling. What matters is the solution. "This penthouse is worth $5 million. I have a contact at a predatory lending firm. We forge your father's signature on a quitclaim deed tomorrow. We take a bridge loan, pay Vinny, and have millions left." I stare at the screen. Forgery, wire fraud, grand larceny. She is dragging my son down. Forge his signature. That's a federal crime. Brandon stammers. "We won't get caught if you follow my lead. He has no proof." We double down on the dementia story. "Are you with me? Or do you let Vinny's guys carve me up?" Brandon covers his face, breaking, the structural integrity of his morality crumbling. I wait for clarity, for him to refuse, call the police, defend his father. He lowers his hands, fear replaced by deadened resignation. "Okay," Brandon whispers. "What do we need to do?" The final pillar collapses. The son I knew is dead. The entity on screen is an accomplice. The pain is sharp like a scalpel. My paternal instinct is excised. "Good." Courtney says. "We practice the signature tonight. Sign tomorrow." She pulls her leather bag onto the marble counter. "Oh, by the way," she pulls out an orange prescription bottle. "His beta blockers. I grabbed them before the wedding. I emptied the capsules and replaced them with crushed caffeine pills and sugar. I figured, with all the stress, getting locked out. His heart might fail. A coronary event tonight makes the transfer easier tomorrow." Silence in my truck. Poison. Premeditated attempted murder. She weaponized my biology. Brandon stares at the bottle. "You tried to kill him?" He whispers, horrified. Courtney rolls her eyes. "Grow up. He's old. It would look natural. Are you going to cry over a man who forced you to work construction?" Brandon reaches out, hand trembling. He picks up the bottle. He looks at Courtney. He puts it back in her bag. "Don't tell me things like that." Brandon mumbles. "Do what you have to do. The final stress test, total systemic failure." I terminate the audio feed. The hiss vanishes into freezing silence. They showed their blueprints. They assume I am a soft target who will fade away. They do not understand physics. For every action, an equal and opposite reaction. They applied maximum pressure to my foundation. Now, the foundation pushes back. I type a command. Initiate protocol. Lockdown. Bepreep system acknowledges. I am securing the perimeter, preparing the battlefield. I close the tough book. The penthouse lights burn brightly. I pull out my phone and dial Justice Jameson. "Harry," the gruff voice answers. "Justice," I say coldly. "I need your help. We have a demolition to plan." I kill the engine. Revenge has begun. The blueprint is drawn. I will not stop until the entire structure crashes down upon their heads. She walked back to the living room, and tossed the bottle onto the coffee table. It landed with a hollow clatter. "I took care of the main problem anyway," she said, a wicked, cold smile spreading across her face. "What is that?" Brandon asked, staring at the bottle. "His pills," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The ones he takes every morning for his heart. You took his medicine?" Brandon asked, horror creeping into his tone. "Courtney, he needs those. Without them, his blood pressure spikes." She finished the sentence for him. "He gets stressed, his heart races, and boom, a coronary, a stroke, natural causes, tragic. The stress of the wedding, the dementia. It was too much for the poor old man." Brandon stumbled backward, tripping over the rug. "Are you insane? That's murder. You're trying to kill him." Courtney rolled her eyes, picking up the bottle and shaking it. "Grow up, Brandon. It's not murder, it's a gentle nudge. Besides, I didn't take them. I replaced them. I emptied the capsules and filled them with a mixture of sugar and pure caffeine powder. Tomorrow morning, when he takes his medicine to calm down after today's drama, his heart rate is going to skyrocket." I couldn't breathe. The sheer calculated evil of her words echoed in my ears. She hadn't stolen my home. She had orchestrated my execution. "I can't be a part of this," Brandon whispered, shaking his head, tears forming in his eyes. "I can't let you kill my dad. You're already a part of it," she hissed, stepping forward and shoving the bottle into his chest. "We're married. What's mine is yours, including my debt. You think Vinny cares which one of us he shoots? If I go down, you go down. Now put the bottle back in his bathroom cabinet before he realizes it's missing from his bag. When he comes crawling back here for his stuff, he'll take them." I stared at the screen, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The leather groaned under the pressure. I waited. I prayed to a God I hadn't spoken to since Martha died. I prayed that Brandon would throw the bottle away, call the police, do anything to prove he had a soul. Brandon stared at the bottle in his shaking hands. He looked at Courtney, and then he turned around, walking slowly toward the master bedroom, the bottle clutched in his fist. He was going to put it back. He was complying. He was choosing his vicious, indebted wife over the life of his father. Something broke inside me in that moment, a deep, fundamental fracture in the bedrock of my soul. The love, the patience, the endless reservoir of forgiveness I had held for my son. It evaporated, leaving behind a cold, desolate wasteland of ash and ice. I had spent 20 years trying to protect him from the harsh realities of the world, shielding him from the grind, giving him everything I never had. I had made him weak, I had forged a coward, and now that coward was an accomplice to my murder. The sadness washed away, replaced by a clarity so sharp it cut through the fatigue in my mind. I was no longer a father trying to teach a lesson. I was a man backed into a corner, surrounded by enemies. And I knew how to fight. I had fought the unions, the corrupt city inspectors, the ruthless developers. I had fought the elements and won. Courtney thought she was playing a game of checkers, pushing pieces around a board. She didn't realize she had declared war on a man who owned the board. I closed the laptop, the screen going black, plunging the cab back into darkness. The rain continued to fall, a steady, rhythmic drumbeat of impending doom. I started the engine, shifting the truck into gear. The tires squealed slightly on the wet pavement as I pulled out of the alleyway, driving into the Boston night. The next morning broke gray and sullen, a thick fog rolling off the harbor and blanketing the city in a damp chill. I parked the truck outside a Greasy Spoon diner in Southie. I walked inside, the bell above the door jingling. I took a booth in the back facing the door. I ordered black coffee and waited. 10 minutes later, a tall man in a tailored charcoal suit walked in. His silver hair was coiffed, his posture rigid, demanding authority. Justice Thomas Jameson, of the Massachusetts Supreme Court. Tommy, before he wore robes, before he wielded a gavel, Tommy was a 19-year-old kid on my framing crew back in the early 90s. We were working on a high-rise project downtown. The scaffolding gave way during a squall. Tommy was strapped to a beam, dangling 80 feet above the pavement, the metal groaning, threatening to snap. While the rest of the crew froze, I climbed out onto the buckling steel, tied a secondary line around my waist, and hauled him back to solid ground, tearing 3 ligaments in my shoulder in the process. He never forgot. We hadn't spoken in 5 years, but when I called him at 4 in the morning, he answered. Harry, he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. You look like hell. I feel worse, Tommy, I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic mug. You said on the phone it was an emergency, a matter of life and death. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. Talk to me. Who hit you? I opened the tough book on the table and turned the screen toward him. I pressed play on the recording from the night before. He watched Courtney admit to the mob debt. He watched her explain the poisoned pills. He watched Brandon comply. As the video played, the air around Tommy seemed to grow colder, his judicial demeanor hardening into something dangerous and primitive. Attempted murder, Tommy said softly, the legal terms slipping out with deadly precision. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, elder abuse, aggravated assault, and mob connections. Harry, this isn't a family dispute. She's going to kill you, and your son is going to let it happen. I know, I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. I can have a cruiser there in 10 minutes, Tommy said, pulling his phone from his pocket. We arrest her right now, we pull the pills, test them, she goes away for a long time. No, I said, reaching across the table and placing my hand over his phone. Not yet. Tommy looked at me, confusion knitting his brow. Harry, she put caffeine in your heart meds. If you had taken those. But I didn't, I interrupted, and arresting her now puts her away for attempted murder. She'll plead it down. She'll claim she was joking, or stressed. She'll get a few years. Maybe parole, and Brandon will play the victim. No, Tommy, I want her destroyed. I want her to lose everything. Her freedom, her reputation, her future, and I want Brandon to watch it happen. Tommy stared at me, seeing the ruthless contractor he had worked for decades ago, the man who never backed down from a fight. Slowly he nodded. What's the play? She needs my signature on a quitclaim deed to mortgage the house, to pay off Vinny, I explained. The bank will require a wet signature notarized or witnessed, especially for an asset of that size. She's desperate. She has to pay the mob by Friday. She's going to try to force me to sign it. And you're going to let her? I'm going to bait the trap, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. I need you to be there, Tommy, with the police, not beat cops. I want a SWAT team ready to breach. I want the chief of police. I want maximum shock and awe. Tommy smiled, a grim, predatory expression. I can arrange that. Chief Miller owes me a favor, but you need to tighten the screws first. Make her desperate. A desperate animal makes mistakes. I'm going to the bank right now, I said, closing the laptop. I'm cutting off the air supply. An hour later, I was sitting in the mahogany-paneled office of Arthur Sterling, the branch manager at First National Bank of Boston. Arthur was a fastidious man, impeccable in his dress and mannerisms, a guardian of generational wealth. He had managed my portfolio for 30 years. Harry, Arthur said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, looking at me with deep concern. I received your message. You want to initiate a level 5 security freeze? Are you entirely sure? That locks down everything. Checking, savings, investment portfolios, trust accounts, credit lines. Nothing goes in, nothing goes out, not even a dollar. Do it, Arthur, I commanded, my voice echoing in the quiet office. Every account linked to my name, every card issued to Brandon. I want it all frozen now. He turned to his computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Processing the biometric override, voice confirmation required, Harry Caldwell. I stated clearly, authorization code Sierra Tango 904, execute total asset freeze. The screen flashed red. Done, Arthur said, turning back to me. Your entire $18 million portfolio is locked down. It cannot be accessed without you physically standing in this room, providing a blood sample, a retinal scan, and a sworn affidavit. What is going on, Harry? I'm teaching a lesson, Arthur, I said, standing up. A $2 million lesson at the least. The financial guillotine dropped swiftly. At precisely 2:15 p.m., Brandon walked into the Tiffany & Co. boutique in Copley Place. I didn't need to be there to know how it played out. My phone buzzed with the automatic alerts Arthur had configured for declined transactions. Brandon, trying to appease his furious, mob-indebted wife, attempted to purchase a $30,000 diamond tennis bracelet using the platinum card linked to my primary account. I imagined the impeccably dressed salesperson sliding the card through the terminal. The brief pause, the quiet, apologetic tone of the clerk, declined. Brandon would have scoffed. Swiping it again, declined. He would have pulled out a backup card, a gold Visa, declined. The humiliation, the realization dawning on him that the endless river of cash he had taken for granted his entire life had dried up. His fake kingdom was crumbling. He was standing in a luxury boutique, trying to buy the affection of a woman who wanted his father dead, and he couldn't even afford the parking fee in the garage. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a text message. It was from Courtney. Harry, we need to talk. We got off on the wrong foot yesterday. The wedding stress was too much for all of us. Please come to the penthouse tonight for a family dinner. We made your favorite, roast beef. We want to apologize and clear the air. 7 p.m. Please don't be late. The bait, it was crude, transparent, and entirely predictable. She needed the signature. She knew I liked roast beef. She was playing the role of the contrite daughter-in-law, hiding the dagger behind her back. I typed a reply, my thumb hovering over the screen for a moment before pressing send. The cold leather of the steering wheel grounded me, a stark contrast to the burning rage igniting within my chest. Every fiber of my being wanted to kick the door down, to confront them right then and there. I wanted to watch Brandon stammer and scramble for excuses. But rage is a sloppy weapon. It makes you blind, it makes you rush, and rushing is how you get killed. I hadn't survived 3 decades in the cutthroat Boston construction business by being sloppy. I built an empire by being methodical, by calculating every load-bearing wall and every stress point. Courtney was a stress point, a structural flaw in my family, and she needed to be demolished. I remembered pouring concrete in freezing temperatures, my hands calloused and bleeding, working 80-hour weeks just to put food on the table for Martha and our infant son. I remembered the pride I felt when I signed the papers for my first independent contracting firm. Every dollar I earned was soaked in sweat and sacrifice. I built my fortune brick by brick, securing contracts through sheer force of will. I provided for Brandon, so he would never know that kind of exhaustion. I gave him the world on a silver platter. I bought him his first car, paid his tuition in full, handed him a vice president title at my company. I thought I was being a good father. Instead, I had systematically dismantled his ability to survive in the real world. I created a soft, pliable victim, perfectly primed for a parasite like Courtney to latch onto. The rain battered the windshield of the truck. Boston at night is a different city. The historic brownstones and towering glass skyscrapers blurred together in the downpour. I drove past a 30-story commercial complex downtown, a building my company had framed 12 years ago. I remembered the exact specifications of the steel girders, the precise depth of the foundation. I built monuments that would stand for a century, yet my own legacy, my own flesh and blood, was crumbling into dust. When I reached the diner, the smell of stale coffee and fried grease hit me. Tommy arrived looking exactly as I remembered him, albeit older. He had always possessed a quiet, dangerous energy. Even as a teenager swinging a hammer, he commanded respect. Now, with the full weight of the judicial system behind him, he was formidable. The Massachusetts Supreme Court wasn't just a position for him, it was a kingdom he ruled with absolute authority. He was known for being merciless, a judge who didn't tolerate games or theatrics. He respected the law, but more importantly, he respected loyalty. The kind of loyalty forged in blood and near-death experiences. The kind of loyalty Brandon clearly lacked. As the realization of his financial ruin settled upon Brandon in that high-end boutique, I could almost picture the precise moment his fragile ego shattered. The clerk's polite refusal would feel like a physical blow. The sudden, terrifying realization that he was entirely dependent on the man he had just agreed to murder. He would try to call me. He would panic. He would finally realize that actions have brutal consequences. The safety net was gone forever. The only thing left was the cold, hard ground rushing up to meet him at a breakneck, terrifying speed. The relentless, driving rain hammered against the heavy glass windshield of my old Ford F-150, each heavy drop sounding like a tiny, unforgiving gavel, striking the pane in a courtroom of my own making. I purposely hid my immense wealth, hoping desperately to teach my only son Brandon the intrinsic, irreplaceable value of a hard day's manual labor, the quiet, unspoken dignity of earning one's keep in a harsh, unforgiving world. I wanted him to understand, at a fundamental cellular level, that true wealth wasn't what you wore on your back, the brand of the luxury car you drove, or the square footage of your penthouse, but the ironclad, unbreakable integrity you carried within your soul. I failed him. Or perhaps, in the end, he simply failed me. My untraceable, cheap prepaid burner phone buzzed on the dusty, cracked dashboard, a harsh, grating electronic sound shattering the quiet, meditative isolation of the cab. "Harry, please come over for a family dinner tonight. We miss you so much." The typed words were pure, unadulterated, toxic venom cleverly disguised as sweet, inviting honey. I watched her boastfully, gleefully confess to replacing my vital, life-saving heart medication, the essential beta blockers, with entirely useless, dangerous sugar and caffeine pills, hoping fervently I would suffer a agonizing, fatal heart attack right there in the living room so they could immediately inherit my life's monumental work. I destroy the spreading rot, and I start anew from the bedrock. I systematically, carefully unbuttoned my heavy, damp, red flannel shirt and reached down into the passenger seat for the surveillance wire. The small piece of metal felt unusually, oppressively heavy, a physical, tangible manifestation of the burden of truth I was about to carry directly into the center of the Viper's treacherous, winding nest. All I had to do was walk through the front door and let her hang herself. I reached out and turned the ignition key, the powerful V8 engine roaring instantly to life with a comforting, familiar, deep rumble that vibrated through the worn floorboards. Tonight, however, it would serve as the ultimate, destructive battleground. I walked the remaining, miserable distance, the freezing, relentless rain soaking through to my broad, aching shoulders. The polished, heavy steel doors slid open smoothly and silently on the penthouse floor, revealing instantly the chaotic, disgusting scene within. The pungent, overwhelming smell hit my sensitive senses first. They were the absolute, perfect epitome of the insidious, spreading rot that had deeply, fatally infected my weak, pathetic son. Brandon stood rigidly, awkwardly near the expansive imported marble kitchen island, holding a delicate crystal glass of sparkling water, looking pale, sickly, and visibly nervous. Only cold, calculated, absolute justice, Courtney spotted me standing quietly in the entryway. She wore a highly revealing, tight designer dress that cost significantly more than most of my hard-working, dedicated foreman made in a grueling, exhausting month of labor, a frivolous, disgusting garment bought entirely with stolen, tainted blood money and endless, malicious deceit. "Harry, oh my God, you came!" she exclaimed loudly, her voice falsely sweet, high-pitched and piercing, deliberately designed to carry clearly over the thumping, awful music. She reached her thin, tanned arms out wide, attempting to pull me into a fake, loving, performative embrace for her captive, watching audience. I took one deliberate, heavy step backward, my weathered, lined face an impenetrable, entirely emotionless mask of carved, solid granite. I simply let the heavy, oppressive silence hang thickly in the air between us, brandishing it expertly like a heavy, blunt, dangerous weapon in the middle of the loud, chaotic, crowded room. Her manufactured, perfect smile faltered noticeably for a minuscule, revealing fraction of a second, a tiny glaring crack in the flawless porcelain facade. "Come in, please, come in," she urged nervously, her voice shaking slightly as she gestured wildly toward the formal dining table. "We have so much important, urgent business to discuss tonight. We want to be a happy, normal family again." She led me, almost pulling me to the grand, heavy mahogany dining table, the exact specific one Martha and I had lovingly, carefully picked out together on a trip to Florence 30 beautiful years ago. The literal instruments of my supposed imminent financial destruction. "Look, Harry," Courtney began smoothly, her tone shifting seamlessly and expertly to a patronizing, soothing, deeply condescending cadence, as if she were speaking to a deeply confused, unintelligent, stubborn child. "We know for a fact you've been struggling immensely lately. Your memory, your physical, declining health, it's deteriorating rapidly, but to secure your premium, highly coveted spot, and to legally, properly manage your complex, vast affairs, we desperately need you to sign these papers right now, tonight." She picked up a heavy, highly ornate, solid gold-plated fountain pen and extended it forcefully toward my chest. The ambient, chaotic, loud noise of the ridiculous party seemed to fade entirely into the background, leaving only the harsh, rasping sound of her ragged, anxious, shallow breathing and the rhythmic, steady, loud ticking of the antique, priceless grandfather clock standing in the long hallway. "A simple, quick signature, Harry. It's for the absolute, undeniable best, for everyone involved." she insisted firmly, leaning her entire body closer across the wide table. I could see clearly the raw, unmasked, terrifying desperation swimming wildly in her dark, dilated eyes, the frantic, clawing, animalistic urgency desperately masking her sheer, paralyzing terror of the violent, unforgiving loan shark's looming, deadly midnight deadline. I looked down slowly at the heavy pen. Then I shifted my intense gaze and looked directly, piercingly at Brandon. "Son," I said slowly, my voice low, gravelly, and carrying the immense, crushing, undeniable weight of a mountain. "Is this truly, honestly what you want to do to your father?" Brandon swallowed hard, his prominent, thin Adam's apple bobbing nervously, rapidly in his pale throat. "Dad, it's complicated. Please, Dad, do it so we can move on." His pathetic, staggering weakness disgusted me to my core. I turned my focused attention slowly, deliberately back to Courtney. "You want me to sign away my home," I stated flatly, the heavy words devoid of any recognizable human emotion. "It's merely a temporary legal transfer of management, Harry." "You're getting confused again," she lied smoothly, expertly, her false, arrogant confidence returning in a sudden rush. "Sign the document, please, and we can all relax and celebrate." I reached my right, heavy hand slowly, deliberately into the deep, reinforced pocket of my tweed jacket. I pulled it slowly out of my pocket and set it down hard, with purpose, on the pristine, polished mahogany table. Click. The sound was sharp, distinct, cutting cleanly and effortlessly through the low, ambient murmurs of the crowded room. My specific, highly necessary prescription beta blockers. Courtney's eyes snapped instantly to the small plastic bottle. The carefully, meticulously constructed mask did not slip slightly. It shattered into 1,000 jagged, irreparable, sharp pieces. "I have been feeling quite a bit off lately," I said, my voice echoing loudly with a chilling, entirely unnatural calmness. "My chest has been tight. It's funny though, funny, but it tastes remarkably, undeniably like pure, sweet sugar and raw, bitter caffeine." Brandon gasped loudly, a horrific sound taking a stumbling, entirely uncoordinated step backward. He knew, instantly, with absolute certainty, that I knew everything. Courtney's breath hitched audibly, painfully in her tight throat. Raw, unadulterated, primal panic seized her sharp, angular features. She realized in that terrifying, crystal-clear instant that I was not a weak, senile, pathetic old man waiting quietly to die. I was a highly dangerous, calculating, apex predator who had willingly, purposely allowed her to walk directly, blindly into my fortified, inescapable territory. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered uncontrollably, her voice shrill, cracking loudly under the immense, crushing, sudden pressure. "You're crazy. You're insane. You're having another dementia episode. Give me those pills right now." She lunged across the wide, polished table, her long, sharp, manicured acrylic claws scraping harshly, loudly against the wood, desperate to grab the damning, undeniable physical evidence. She was fast, fueled entirely by the surging, electric adrenaline of a trapped, cornered, desperate rat. But I am a man who spent 40 grueling, exhausting years swinging heavy, solid steel sledgehammers, lifting, crushing steel I-beams, and wrestling constantly, daily with the unforgiving, brutal, harsh elements of nature. My physical reflexes are finely honed by decades of intense, urban survival, my brute, raw strength forged permanently, indelibly in the scorching, hot fires of endless, punishing manual labor. I moved significantly, surprisingly faster, my large, deeply calloused, strong right hand clamped down brutally, unforgivingly on her delicate, thin, fragile wrist with the unstoppable, crushing force of an industrial hydraulic vise. She cried out loudly, genuinely in profound shock and sharp, real pain, struggling wildly to pull her trapped, immobilized arm back. I held her firmly, utterly immovable, an unyielding, solid anchor of righteous, burning, intense fury. "You thought I was weak," I growled low, deep in my broad chest, my voice vibrating with a terrifying, primal, animalistic intensity. I leaned my face in close to hers, the acrid, sour scent of her genuine, terrified fear, totally overpowering her, floral perfume. "You arrogantly thought, because I have gray hair and deep, worn wrinkles, I am a helpless, pathetic victim. You purposefully, maliciously replaced my life-saving, essential medication. You deliberately, coldly tried to induce a fatal, agonizing heart attack. You tried to brutally, cowardly murder me right here in my own home to steal the incredible empire I built from nothing with my bare, bleeding, calloused hands. The oblivious drunk partygoers had fallen, deathly, entirely silent. The thumping, synthetic, loud bass of the music seemed miles away, in another universe now. A dozen glowing recording camera phones were quickly lowered. The shallow, vapid influencers paralyzed entirely, frozen by the intense, violent, unfolding drama, sensing the highly dangerous, electric, terrifying shift in the room's previously festive atmosphere. "Let me go right now, you're breaking my arm!" Courtney shrieked hysterically, thrashing her entire body wildly against my iron, unbreakable grip. She looked desperately around the large room, locking her panicked eyes with my terrified son. "Brandon, do something, you idiot! He's attacking me. Call the police." "Help me right now!" Brandon stood frozen, a pathetic, immobile, useless statue of cowardly, disgusting inaction. He looked nervously, rapidly between us, his mouth opening and closing silently, rapidly like a suffocating, dying fish pulled from the water. "Dad, please stop it," he whispered weakly, pathetically, uselessly, but he did not move a single, solitary muscle to intervene or help his wife. I released her bruised, trapped wrist with a powerful, dismissive, forceful shove that sent her stumbling awkwardly, dangerously backward into the sharp, hard edge of the mahogany table. She caught herself clumsily, barely avoiding falling, panting raggedly, rubbing her arm vigorously, painfully where my distinct, large fingerprints were already rapidly forming dark, ugly, purple and black bruises. The stark, naked fear in her wide, dilated eyes morphed rapidly, terrifyingly into a rabid, cornered, purely animalistic fury. She realized instantly the entire complex game was changing rapidly, collapsing around her, and she desperately, wildly tried to regain total control of the narrative through sheer, unabashed, psychotic aggression. "You're a delusional, sick, pathetic old fool," she screamed at the absolute top of her lungs, foul, wet spit flying uncontrollably from her trembling, pale lips abandoning all remaining thin pretense of polite human civility. "You have no solid, real proof. No one in this entire room will ever believe a word you say. I'll call the cops right now myself. I'll tell them you viciously, brutally assaulted me unprovoked. I'll tell the judge you're insane, dangerous, and they'll lock you away securely in a padded, windowless, dark cell for the rest of your pathetic, miserable, short life. Sign the damn papers right now, Harry, or I swear to Almighty God, I will, entirely and utterly destroy you and everything you love." She pointed a trembling, sharp, manicured finger, threateningly at the stacked, fraudulent legal documents resting on the table. The harsh, violent ultimatum hung ominously in the dead silent air, a desperate, final, highly dangerous gamble from a ruined, panicked woman who had totally run out of viable, safe options. She desperately needed that specific exact signature, or Vinny, the ruthless, violent loan shark, would undoubtedly shatter her kneecaps with an aluminum baseball bat before the sun even thought about rising. I looked calmly at her flushed, sweaty, panicked face, my expression, entirely devoid of any fear, entirely devoid of any anger. I felt only a profound, icy, crystal-clear clarity. The elaborate, perfect trap was fully, irreversibly sprung. The final, devastating, checkmating pieces were moving, flawlessly into their destined place. "All right," I said calmly, my voice dropping drastically to a terrifyingly quiet, even, dead whisper. "I'll sign the deed." Courtney paused mid-breath, blinking rapidly, repeatedly in profound, total confusion, thrown entirely off balance by my sudden, highly unexpected, seemingly weak capitulation. A bright, sudden flicker of arrogant, greedy triumph ignited instantly, brightly in her dark, calculating eyes, her insatiable, endless greed overriding her basic, necessary caution. She smoothed her wrinkled, designer dress nervously, repeatedly, trying desperately, quickly to compose herself, breathing loudly through her nose. "Good. That is good. That's smart of you, Harry. Sign the bottom line right there," where I pointed. I picked up the heavy, gold-plated fountain pen. The smooth, polished metal was pleasantly, surprisingly cool against my warm, dry skin. I leaned forward slowly over the grand, wide mahogany table, positioning the sharp, inked pen nib precisely over the blank, waiting signature line of the highly illegal, fraudulent quitclaim deed. I felt the tiny, hidden camera on my lapel recording every single microscopic angle, every tiny, fleeting expression, every loudly uttered word. I felt the hidden, secure wire, transmitting the entire damning, highly illegal exchange directly, instantly to Justice Jameson and Chief Miller, who were waiting tensely, anxiously in the mobile, armored command van parked around the dark corner on the quiet street. I pressed the sharp gold nib firmly, deliberately to the thick paper. The dark black ink flowed smoothly. I did not, however, write my legal proper name. In large, bold, highly unmistakable, deeply pressed block letters, I wrote, LOOKBEHINDY, placed heavy pen down gently, carefully on the polished table. I stood up, rigidly straight, adjusted my heavy tweed jacket, and looked deliberately, slowly at my heavy steel wristwatch. It was precisely 7:15 p.m. What the hell is this? Courtney snarled, snatching the legal paper up, her eyes scanning my scrawl. What the hell does this nonsense mean? Look behind me. Are you insane? The world-shattering answer came, not from my lips, but from the thickly carpeted corridor outside the penthouse door. Ding. The private exclusive elevator arrived at the top floor. The chime was immediately drowned out by the sound of combat boots hitting the floor. Dozens of boots with military precision. The front door did not open. It exploded, inward with a gunshot-like crack, the frame splintering into a flying shower of wood and plaster. The sheer force of the sudden breach sent a shockwave rolling powerfully through the room. Boston Police, nobody move. Show your hands right now. A wall of gear flooded into the open foyer. The armed, trained SWAT team poured into the room, standard issue, rifles raised and ready, sights across the screaming, panicking crowd. The air was filled with the cacophony of shouting voices, the clattering of equipment, and the strobes of flashlights cutting through the lighting. Get down on the ground right now. Show me your hands. The officers roared in perfect unison, their commands echoing off the ceilings. The influencer friends screamed in terror, dropping their drinks, shattering everywhere across the floor, and falling to the ground beneath the furniture, their internet-tough courage evaporating. The smell of spilled alcohol was replaced by the scent of ozone, sweat, and pure adrenaline. Through the sea of shouting bodies, two figures walked with slow calm. Chief Miller, his face set firmly in a line under his visor, and Justice Jameson, wearing a dark trench coat, his eyes locked directly, laser-focused onto Courtney with a fury. Courtney stood, paralyzed, the quitclaim deed fluttering uselessly from her hands to the floor. The color had vanished from her face once again. She looked like a ghost, trapped helplessly, hopelessly in the glare of reality. What is all this?" she whispered weakly, her voice barely audible over the loud shouting and chaos. "You can't do this. You have no right. This is my house. I own this property." Justice Jameson stepped forward confidently, signaling the armed SWAT officers with a hand gesture to securely establish the outer perimeter. The noise dialed down to a silence only by the whimpering and sobbing of the guests lying flat on the floor. "Courtney Caldwell," Chief Miller announced, his voice with authority. "You are officially under arrest for aggravated, severe elder abuse, conspiracy to commit premeditated murder, and larceny." "No," Courtney shrieked, backing away, waving her hands in the air. "No, this is a mistake. He attacked me first. Look at my wrist. The house is legally mine. My husband's legal name is on the official will. I have rights. I want a lawyer." I walked and around the table, my steel-toed work boots thudding against the floorboards. I stood directly, closely before her, a figure of. The time for games had officially ended. The hammer of blind justice was falling. "You have nothing," I stated, the words striking her like blows. "You assumed I was an fool who would leave an $18 million estate vulnerable to parasites. You wrongly assumed I didn't plan for decades for the future. You fatally assumed you could easily steal my life's incredible legacy to pay off a low-level thug." I looked over at Justice Jameson, who gave a slow nod. 10 years ago," I continued, my voice echoing in the room shortly after my Martha died, "I realized quickly that Brandon severely lacked the fundamental character to manage wealth. I wanted to protect the money from predators like you." Courtney's eyes widened to impossible proportions, darting between my face and the armed police officers. "I placed this penthouse, the bank accounts, the extensive, lucrative stock investments, the $18 million portfolio into an legal trust. I revealed coldly, delivering the world-shattering blow. I am merely the legally appointed trustee. The sole legal beneficiary of the wealthy trust is the St. Jude Home for Orphan Children. The silence in the destroyed room deepened, the weight of my words sinking into her brain. By actively attempting to forge my legal required signature to mortgage this property, I explained, the calculation in my tone echoing the inescapable finality of her impending doom. You weren't defrauding a sick man, Courtney. You were attempting to liquidate the legally protected assets of a federally registered charity across state lines. You didn't commit a low-level, easily fought state felony. You committed a serious crime. The realization hit her like a freight train. The air left her lungs in a loud gasp. A crime, the FBI prison, no parole, no escape. And Justice Jameson added, his voice dripping with well-earned satisfaction. Because you used an interstate monitored electronic banking system to attempt the wire fraud, the prosecutors have already accepted the high-profile slam-dunk case. The FBI will be taking full custody of you shortly. Courtney's legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed onto her knees, her dress pooling uselessly around her on the floor. The arrogance, the cruelty, the entitlement, it all shattered, leaving behind only a shell of a human being. She began to sob, a sound of despair. She knew well, without a doubt, that Vinny would soon come for her. Unpaid debt. And now the full weight of the United States government was coming for her. Freedom. She was trapped securely in a cage of her own making, and I had thrown away the only key. Cuff her right now, Chief Miller ordered to his men. 2 SWAT officers stepped forward. They grabbed her, arms roughly, hauling her to her feet without even an ounce of gentleness or care. The of the police handcuffs clicked securely around her wrists, a sound of finality. She did not struggle at all. She did not speak a word. The will to fight had been drained from her dark soul. They dragged her away, her fashionable heels dragging across the floor, parading her past her friends who were now being escorted, roughly out by officers. She was stripped of her wealth, her standing, and her shred of. She was nothing at all but a criminal heading directly into the dark abyss of the justice system. The room emptied, the police clearing the remaining guests, leaving only the aftermath of the storm. I turned. Brandon was still standing near the kitchen island, from head to toe. He was, tears streaming down his face, his chest heaving with loud sobs. He looked directly at me, his eyes pleading, begging for the parental love he had so discarded. He fell to his knees, crawling across the floor toward me, grabbing the hem of my jacket with hands. Dad, please, he bawled, the sound, and I'm so sorry, I didn't want to hurt you at all. She made me do it. I didn't know anything about the pills, I swear to God. Please, Dad, don't let them take me away. Don't let me go to prison. I have nothing left. I'm your only son, please help me right now. I looked down at the boy I had raised from birth. The boy I had protected from the world, the boy I had tried to teach the value of work. I saw only weakness. I saw a man who had stood idly by while a monster plotted my cold-blooded murder. The anger had burned out, leaving only a sorrow in my chest. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. I dropped it onto the floor directly in front of him. I am not sending you to prison, Brandon, I said, my voice devoid of any. Justice Jameson agreed to leave you out of the indictment, provided you cooperate fully and testify against Courtney. But understand this, I am not saving you either. Brandon looked down at the envelope, his hands as he picked it up. He tore it open. Inside, I instructed coldly, is a divorce petition. Sign it immediately, right now. It is the only legal barrier standing firmly between you and the mobsters who will come looking to collect Courtney's $500,000 gambling debt. Without it, you are legally liable. With it, you cut all ties. He nodded, his tears splashing down onto the legal documents. Okay, thank you, Dad. Thank you so much. There is something else in the envelope, I added, cutting off his display of gratitude. He reached inside and pulled out a piece of paper. A ticket, that is a one-way Greyhound bus ticket to Omaha, Nebraska, I stated firmly, my eyes locking onto his with an intensity. It leaves the station at midnight tonight. I called an informant of mine out there. He runs a roofing crew. It pays $15 an hour. It is back-breaking labor. You will sweat in the sun. You will bleed on the shingles. and you will finally learn what it means to truly earn a living. Brandon stared at the ticket, his mouth agape in shock, horrified by the daunting prospect of work. Omaha? Roofing? Dad, I can't. I don't know how to do any of that at all. I have no money, nowhere to stay out there. He has a cot in a house waiting for you. Rent comes directly out of your paycheck. I replied, showing mercy. You will leave this penthouse right now, immediately. You will take nothing but the clothes currently on your back and the duffel bag waiting in the hall closet. Your credit cards are frozen, your bank accounts are closed, your car is already repossessed. Dad, please, he begged, clutching my leg much tighter. Don't do this to me. I'm your only son. Please, I'm begging you. My son died a time ago, Brandon, I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The man kneeling before me is a stranger who valued over his own father's life. You have a choice. Take the bus and learn how to be a man, or stay here and face the loan sharks on your own. I am done protecting you. I but with kicked my leg free from his grasp. I turned my back on him. I did not watch him pack the duffel bag. I did not watch him walk out the door. The sound of the front door closing behind him was a punctuation mark on a chapter of my life. The penthouse was now. The armed police had gone. The loud influencers had fled far into the night. The silence was, with the residue of violence, greed, and betrayal. The air still smelled of perfume and fear, but beneath it, the scent of the and paper began to return. I walked into the living room. The furniture Courtney had purchased with money looked and out of place in the space. I pulled out my burner phone and dialed a charity organization that furnished homes for women. I told the director to bring a truck first thing in the morning and take it all away. Every piece. I walked into the kitchen and opened a cabinet. Tucked carefully away in the dark back, hidden behind goblets I never used, was a mug. Brandon had made it for me in his third-grade art class. The glaze was, the handle was, and the words "World's Best Builder" were on the side in lettering. I took the mug down carefully. I wiped a layer of dust off the rim with my thumb. I walked over to the large wine cooler Courtney had recently installed, totally bypassing the rare vintage champagne, and pulled out a highly simple, basic bottle of cheap, robust red wine, the exact, precise kind Martha and I used to drink often when we were struggling highly to make the monthly rent. I popped the cork, poured a generous, deep red measure into the ceramic mug, and walked slowly, highly deliberately out onto the wide, expansive balcony. The driving, relentless rain had entirely stopped. The fierce, highly powerful storm had broken, leaving the night air feeling highly crisp, cool, and clean. The sprawling, highly magnificent Boston skyline stretched out magnificently before me, a glittering, highly endless ocean of bright, piercing light and towering glass. I easily, highly clearly recognized the highly distinct silhouettes of the tall towers I had personally built, the highly heavy, solid steel skeletons I had hoisted personally, carefully into the sky. They stood tall and highly resolute, entirely unbothered by the passing, temporary storms, anchored deep and secure into the solid, highly unbreakable bedrock. I took a long, slow sip of the wine. It tasted highly slightly bitter, yet profoundly comforting. I stood entirely alone in the highly chill, sweeping wind. I had lost my entire complete family. The innocent, sweet son I once deeply loved was gone entirely forever, banished permanently, highly to the harsh, unforgiving reality of the real, highly tough world. The huge legacy I had hoped strongly to pass down was permanently, entirely redirected to those who truly, deeply needed it. The highly sharp, painful pain of the ultimate betrayal was a deep, highly throbbing, bleeding wound that would undoubtedly, highly certainly take many long, hard years to fully, entirely scar over. But as I looked out quietly over the highly beautiful, sprawling city I personally helped create, I realized with absolute, highly total clarity that I had successfully reclaimed something far more valuable than a weak son's highly false affection or a deeply greedy daughter-in-law's fake, painted smile. I had entirely, fully reclaimed my personal deep dignity. I had successfully protected my entire life's legacy. I had successfully taught the highly hardest, most utterly necessary lesson of my entire, highly long life. Sometimes, highly true, unconditional love isn't about giving highly endlessly until you have nothing left. Sometimes, highly true love is setting a hard, unyielding, highly unbreakable boundary. Sometimes, it is allowing the highly catastrophic, consequences of their own deeply selfish actions to crush them, utterly, so they might finally, highly eventually, learn how to stand upright entirely on their own two strong feet. I raised the highly imperfect ceramic mug slowly to the glowing, beautiful skyline, a silent, highly solitary toast to my deeply beloved Martha, to the highly innocent saint. Jude orphans who would benefit greatly from my entire life's work, and to the cold, highly hard, extremely unyielding truth of absolute total justice. The night was highly quiet now. My heart, though broken deeply, beat with a steady, strong, highly unshakable rhythm. The highly chaotic, loud storm was finally entirely over, and Harry Caldwell was, at long last, totally at peace.